Hi everyone. This week is Mental Health Week I think it's in the UK, from the 14th of May to the 20th of May, which is today. And also it is Mental Health Awareness Month in Ireland. The Green Ribbon campaign is running at the moment. So I've been thinking about doing this all week, and I've said I'm going to do it, and then I chickened out, and then I said I was going to do it again, and I chickened out, and then this morning I decided that's it, I'm just going to do it. I suppose it's just something that is hard to talk about, and I hope that my video will inspire people that are diabetic and non-diabetic to talk about whatever issues it is that bothers them or causes them pain in some way, because talking is what makes it easier. It's the first step, and it does help. I found it does help for me. So I decided to talk about my own mental health, with regard to my diabetes, and what I've gone through over the last 29 years. So I suppose I was diagnosed when I was 9. I was just gone 9. So I was quite young, and it had already been a traumatic year for me. A grandmother that I was very close to had died in the April, and I turned 9 in the August, and then in the October I was diagnosed with diabetes. So I suppose it was traumatic. It was a traumatic year all around, and I don't remember too much about being diagnosed. I suppose I blocked it out because it was quite traumatic for me. But I do remember, the three things that I remember is being absolutely terrified, just having that fear, crying a lot, and just being really, really angry. So that was quite a tough time for me, and I suppose I have to mention my mother here because she was the inspiration for me. She learned everything she needed to know and needed to teach me about my diabetes. And a lot of what I know today is actually from my mother. So thank you, Mother, for all of that information, and just to helping me to learn what I needed to learn to survive with diabetes. And she still helps me to this day. But one thing she always said to me was, diabetes will never interfere with anything that you do. She said, I will never let diabetes interfere with anything that you do. And I suppose down through the years, I have carried that with me, and I have been very determined with my diabetes, even though I hate it every single day, and I have good days and bad days. So my early teens, I suppose my teenage years and my early 20s were quite difficult for me. For any teenager, it's a time where your hormones are going crazy, and your life is changing, or your body is changing a little bit. And on top of that, I had to deal with the diabetes. And I suppose at that age, you don't want to be different. You want to be kind of the same as everybody else. And I found it very, very difficult because I was different. Because I had to give injections, and I had to look after my diabetes. And when you're that age as well, you don't, I suppose I wasn't allowed to eat sweets, and children like to eat sweets. And you had to have a willpower to say no when people were eating chocolate and sweets around you, and that's quite hard when you're a teenager. So it was quite difficult for me. My early teens, I ended up in hospital for 2 months and a week because I was having a lot of hypos, and my sugars, I couldn't get my sugars in control, or my mum couldn't get my sugars in control. I suppose maybe it was just to do with hormones and the stress of dealing with the diabetes, because it was still early stages. And then when I went into secondary school, again, a big change in any teenager's life. I wanted to be independent, and I took over my diabetes management and that kind of a thing. And I started eating sweets because I was still in denial and not looking after it, and of course wouldn't let my mum and dad look after it too much for me. They tried, but In the end, I ended up that I went into ketoacidosis, and I ended up in hospital, and I nearly died. I'm very lucky to be alive. My veins collapsed, and I think I gave my mum and dad more of a shock than I got, because I was unconscious and I didn't know, I suppose, what was happening. I do remember being in the hospital and being covered with the tin foil, and the doctors were poking at me to try and get a vein and that kind of a thing, but that's all I really remember. So it did give me a bit of a shock, and I started to look after my diabetes and my control a bit better after that. But again, I found other ways to, I suppose, resent my diabetes, and I was still quite angry and still quite, unhappy, and just not wanting to have it, basically, the same as everybody, I suppose. So my early 20s were quite difficult as well. And then I suppose my late 20s was a bit of a turning point for me. I still hated the diabetes, and I still do today. But I suppose you grow up a little bit as well. And I suppose after that many years, you begin to accept it just that little bit more. So I went to college, and college brought with it more challenges with the diabetes, because when you're stressed out, your diabetes, your sugars go high, my sugars go high. And again, you're back to trying to control it as best you can. So I got through my college years, 6 years, which were very, very tough. And throughout those 6 years, I met David, and my husband, and he's a huge support to me, and still is. And that's great if you have somebody like that can help you and support you through it, even if they don't understand everything about it. And then I suppose I got married, and I had another challenge, which was I had convinced myself that I would never be able to have children, that the diabetes would stop me from having children because I wouldn't be able to get it into good enough control. And I put all of that stress on top of myself. And again, I was proved wrong. And I suppose I thought back to my mum saying in the beginning, diabetes will never let you stop you doing anything. It will never interfere in your life. And it didn't, because I now have Daniel. He's 2.5. And I had a healthy pregnancy, and he's very healthy. So that was a great inspiration to me as well. But that also brought more challenges with the diabetes. And I suppose that's my life in a nutshell. It has been very difficult over the years, and I suppose I've learned to deal with these challenges as best I can. Sometimes not as best I can, but most of the time as best I can. But then again, diabetes brings with it day-to-day challenges. Every day is a challenge. You have, sorry now, my hand is shaking, so I'm going to just move it over here so that it's not shaking so much. So yeah, the diabetes on a day-to-day level, it brings with it a lot of challenges as well. Every day is different. Even if you do the same thing every day and eat the same thing every day, your sugars are never the same. And that's quite difficult to deal with as well. I suppose you've hypos, which is high sugars, and you've hypos, which is low sugars, and hypers, which are high sugars. And they all bring with it symptoms such as the high sugars. They bring fatigue, irritation. You can get quite irritated or kind of be moody, and that affects your motivation. And then the hypos, again, they bring irritation or moodiness. They also bring weakness and sweats. And hypos are dangerous enough as well, if you're a mother and you have children, or if you're a father and you have children. You don't want to be having hypos, because you're not able, your body is not running at 100%, and you're just not able to deal with the day-to-day tasks that you have, I suppose, is the best way to put it. And then There's other factors that are involved, which no matter, I find sometimes if I, no matter how hard I try, the worse it gets. And that's really frustrating, and it's really hard to stay positive when you're trying really hard and it's not working out. Some days when I say, oh, I don't care. I'm not diabetic. I'm just going to do what I like. And then your sugars are really good. So that's quite frustrating. So it's hard on your mental health to, stay positive and function 100% on a day-to-day basis when you have all of these factors involved, where when your sugars are going high, going low, even if you're working really hard to keep it in control. And then you've other factors that you can't control. So you have, like yesterday was a really bad day for me because I was quite active. It was really hot. The weather affects your sugars. I find my sugars go low a lot when the weather is warm, and they go low really quick as well. So the pump can't actually save me from some of these hypos. I also had a few drinks the night before, and alcohol affects your sugars. So yesterday my sugars were like a roller coaster. They were up and down and up and down and up and down, no matter what I did to try and control them. So that puts pressure on you because your body is just not functioning 100%, and that's very, very difficult. So on a day-to-day basis, you have challenges, and that's very hard. So with regard to mental health and diabetes, as I said earlier, it's just so hard to stay positive every day and keep going and say, today I'm going to be really positive. If your sugars are not working out for you and you're trying so hard, you get upset. I have tears, I get angry, and you have to try and find ways of dealing with this anger. And I suppose, as I said earlier, I hate my diabetes every day, but I suppose I found tools over the years to, sorry, I'm getting a little bit emotional there. I suppose I found tools to deal with these things, with the anger, with the resentment, with the frustration. And I suppose they're the tools that you need to carry with you every day. Now, some days they don't work. So, but as I said earlier, talking is really, really good. Share it with people. Join the groups that are on Facebook or whatever social media you use. Join groups in your area and talk to people, because